Assalamu alaikum. Welcome back to Future Dimensions 360. As you guys know, in our last tutorial, we had talked about the structure of folder structure of simple React.js application. In our current tutorial, we will be talking about components. What are components? As you guys know, in our tutorial 1 for this series, we had talked a bit about components. Let's take the same example and let's discuss about it. So for example, we are having a website. There is one header in a traditional website. There is one sidebar, there is one footer, and there is one main content. All these things contains one component. For example, header is a component. Side menu is another component. Folder footer is another component. Main content is another component. In React.js, all these components join together to make a website. There are some components that you can reuse them as well. For example, the side menu is right side menu and left side menu. You can reuse the code of same component in say two different or multiple places. So when all these components join and come up in the root component, this is called React.js application. It's a single web page application when multiple components, nested components, join together and come up in the single component, root component. That root component is known as app. So app is actually a root component that is spawning in the div folder whose ID is root, is known as your full website. So React is responsible for building all those UIs. What you have to do is you have to just create couple of components for your website and pass them in the application folder, application component or root component, you can say. So what is the code of component? The code of component, or what is component, you can say component is nothing but just a JavaScript code inside a JS file, inside a JavaScript file. For example, app.js that we had learned about it in hello world file, we changed the text to hello world. That app.js file is what? Is a component. Okay, there is a component is nothing, just a JavaScript code inside JavaScript file. So what type of what are the types of component? We will be discussing about it, but there is another way of defining component is JSX files as well. So in this tutorial series, we will be talking about JS only, but there is one tutorial or two tutorial we will be bringing for detailed explanation of JSX as well. Let's go ahead and see what are the type of components. So there are normally two types of components available. First one is stateless functional component. Stateless functional component is nothing but just a JavaScript function that returns an HTML. For example, here there is a welcome function that is returning hello world. For example, you can say it's not returning word for sure, but it's just my assumption that it's returning hello world HTML from this function. There is another type of component that is stateful class component. Stateful class component is nothing but just an ES6 class that extends with the components class. The component class is a class that is available in React library. When an ES6 class extends to a React.Component class, that makes a class or a stateful class component. It's required for the stateful class component to return a render function in which it will be returning an HTML for you. So we have two types of components: stateless functional components, stateful class components. Keep it in your note. We will be using both of them a lot in our series. So let's go ahead and check about our code, what we have done last time, what is the component available here. So this is the project we have created in our first lecture, in our second lecture, you can say. So here we have a class named app is available. App is actually a class component that is extends with component class. Component class is imported from React library and it is returning a render method. Inside render method, it's returning somehow HTML that React know where to put. For sure, it will put inside the div for it inside the div that ID is root. So this is what we have it right now in a class component. For functional component, we will be talking about in the coming video. Let's go ahead and summarize what we have learned in our current video. So in our current video, we can say component describe a part of user interface. What component describe? For example, one component describe a header, another component describe a footer, another component describe side menu. So every component have a definition of somehow a part of your user interface or your UI. They are reusable. You can reuse the component, and one component can be nested inside another component. A component that contain another component inside it is called parent component, and a child component is the one that is coming inside parent inside some components. So like for example, root component or app is a parent component, header is a child component for app, or side menu is a child component. So this is like we will be discussing about all this in detail later on as well. So this is called like nested components, and components are reusable also, as I explained couple of times to you. There are two types of components available: stateless functional component and stateful class component. So keep it in your note. In our coming lecture, we will be talking about stateless functional component. I hope that's it for today's tutorial. That's it for today's tutorial. I hope you guys like it. Please don't forget to subscribe and like our channel. Thank you. Allah Hafiz.